I see the long arc of North Korea policy for both South Korea and the United States, beginning with the escalation of tensions in the fall of 2017, then pivoting very quickly to the summit era, which included not only summits with the American president and North-South, but also with President Xi Jinping of China and a relaxation of tensions there, but then ending with the profound failure of the Hanoi summit. And I think virtually everything in North Korea policy since 2019 has rotated on the failure of that summit and the expectations Kim Jong-un had that he would be able to secure some sanctions relief. We know from the Bolton memoir, which has detailed descriptions of how that summit played out, that Kim Jong-un believed that he could get into a room with President Trump and get an offer on the table that would involve quite substantial sanctions relief from major UN Security Council sanctions in return for something that was quite vague with respect to Yongbyon. When President Trump walked away from that offer, the decline in the administration's interest in the North Korean issue was swift. And basically, through the rest of his tenure, there was not much movement of any sort. Now, North Korea sat on this failure for a year, but starting in the end of 2019 and into a series of statements that begin in early 2020, at the fifth plenum, into the eighth party Congress, and now into this year, you see a much darker tone in North Korea's official pronouncements with respect to the future. Those statements are negative with respect to the expectations that any sanctions relief will be forthcoming, and correspondingly negative about the impact of the external environment on the North Korean economy. You're seeing more and more of a self-reliance trope surfacing. So the North Korean economy now faces three shocks, not two, not just the sanctions imposed on commercial trade and the closure of the border, which may have been rational given North Korea's fragile healthcare system. But something I'm going to be watching closely is the rapid increase in food prices globally and the way in which North Korea could get caught in another humanitarian crisis that the Biden and Yoon administrations will have to manage. I see the problem facing the Yoon and Biden administrations that there's basically very little that the United States or South Korea can do at this juncture that would get North Korea back to the negotiating table. The type of concessions that would be necessary, like granting sanctions relief in advance of negotiations, are just really not politically feasible. And so then the question really becomes, should the effort continue on the part of the Biden and Yoon administrations to offer talks, or should we transit to a strategy, as incoming President Yoon suggests, of a tougher approach to North Korea by ratcheting up sanctions? I have to say that I'm relatively dubious that a harder line is going to yield anything other than a continuation of tests. It will be difficult to do this. It will involve secondary sanctions on Chinese entities. But the most important point is that China clearly stands ready, now joined by Russia, to make sure that any toughening of sanctions is basically offset by smuggling and sanctions evasion, which has become systemic and I think will now extend to Russia as well as China. So I'm sorry to end on a relatively pessimistic note for this short clip, but I think we're basically in a containment world where the prospect of negotiations is extremely limited, and the US and South Korea should be focusing on the deterrent, to be sure, but I think we should be focusing on a wider array of issues that don't have anything to do with North Korea, and just building resilience and capacity within the alliance rather than worrying about the deterrence problem, which we have a reasonably good capacity to to manage.